like an hour. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Melissa. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Well, if I look tired, it's because I am. I've been locating wetland flags in 6-foot-high brambles and bush in New Paltz in 95-degree heat all day.
I know it's
So
been brutal.
I hope we can keep to the schedule here.
Me too.
Oh.
Well, you'll have my support in that. Try to get in next week to sign. I have a few more things too. Peter,
What's up?
try to get in to sign. I have a few more things in the pile.
Okay, will do. Will
Thank
do.
you. I know it's been hot and brutal.
Hello.
Hi, Judy.
Judy.
Hi, James.
Hey, Peter, I left you a voicemail message last week. Did you not get it?
I'm not sure.
I guess you didn't get it. I need somebody to do an elevation certification.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Well, you need a surveyor.
So who do you recommend?
Well,
Send me an email.
okay. It's my clock says the official clock.
I mean, all of my maps say part of my property is in the flood zone and part of it isn't, and I don't know if the house is.
Okay. Okay. All right, let's see. Do we have a quorum? We got Stuart, we got James, we got Judy, we got me.
Brian.
And Brian. There's Brian. Okay, great. Okay, so it is 6:30. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting held via Zoom of the Woodstock Planning Board for August 4th, 2022. We do have a quorum. Melissa, are there any updates to the agenda?
There are. We had two that I felt was important. We received a letter and I kind of gave you guys a heads up it was coming from Mr. Mann regarding the Ilse Wacker case. And then we just got some pictures from Miss Ilse Wacker a little later. That's it.
Okay. So we have the minutes for July 1st. I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes as is.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, under communications and announcements, we have an email from Laura Uvasacker regarding her application. We have a Volunteers Day invitation for August 20th. We have a letter from S. Johnson of the Saugerty Center for Health regarding the Lineman's Institute application. We have a revised narrative for the Michael Armstrong Calamar Lane application. We have an email from Antman and Funk regarding the Calamar Lane application. An email from Kaplan regarding the Calamar Lane application. And we have an email from Ashley regarding the spam mails. I didn't get it myself, but there was a letter about it. We have a letter from S. Goldman, Town of Woodstock Housing Committee on Calamar Lane. We have an email from G. Johnson regarding Calamar Lane and an email from Mahone Esquire regarding the Uvasacker application. So we have before us tonight, under new business and scheduled business, we have a public hearing. We have two sketch plan reviews, or one sketch plan review. We have a review and discussion, and then we have reopening a public hearing. So the first one, a couple of minutes early here, but we'll get started. The first public hearing is for the Bearsville Center LLC, Planning Board Case 22-1232, and SPR 22-0141F. And this is a public hearing for a subdivision and site plan review application for a lot line revision to revise and manage and merge lot lines between 3 parcels to create 2 parcels in the NC zoning district located at 277 and 297 Tinker Street. And the representatives are Medenbach and Eggers. So I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Peter, this is Stuart. Can I?
Sure,
make a-
Stuart.
Well, I think we ought to wait till 6:35 in case somebody's going to join us for the public hearing. We don't want them to come back and say that, we preempted them from.
All right, we can wait a minute.
While we're on it, I noticed that Family Acres is on for a review and discussion. I wanted to know if Matt Rudikoff has been invited.
Yes,
Did he respond? Is he going to participate? Okay, thank you. That's the only thing I wanted to raise.
yep, we've been in constant communication. I've been in constant communication with John Lyons, Bernier and Larios, yes, but Matt will be here. He's probably
Thank you.
gonna come on a little later because he knows we had a few things. And he called
Great.
me yesterday morning, so he knows.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Peter.
I'm just
No,
waiting
I
a
can
couple of
just
minutes.
make an announcement to everybody here. There was a lot of invitees to this meeting, so if at any point I mute you, it's just because it's really hard to conduct a planning board meeting with chatter in the background, so don't be offended. It's really the board's turn to talk, and just letting you know, if you're muted, that's kind of why. Thank you.
Da, 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 da.
$1 million question, Alec.
A little thunder up here a few minutes ago.
The wind here.
I hope.
We didn't have thunder, we'd wind.
I have a question about, is anybody getting like cluster flies right now? Like, is this like a thing going on in the area? Like all of a sudden there's like 30 flies by your window or in your window, or they sneaked in. All right.
Sorry, Urena, looks like we got lots more head shakes than nods. I
You gotta stop washing your windows with blood.
Okay, everybody. Well, it is now 6:35. And so entertain a motion to open the public hearing for the
So
Berlin
moved.
Center.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, okay. So I'm going to have Medenbach and Eggers present to the public what their presentation is. But I'd just like to remind everybody present that this is about a lot line revision. This is not a site plan. There's nothing to do with a site plan or anything that goes on the site. Okay, this is just a lot line. So if the rep from Medenbach and Eggers would like to tell the public what they plan to do.
All right, I want to point out that Lizzie is on here too, and she may want to jump in and discuss it. But basically, what we're doing is we're creating a building lot around an existing building so that it could have a separate ownership. And there's also another lot that's going to be combined with the overall site. So there's really no construction proposed with this. It's really just moving some lot lines around. And maybe Lizzie could speak a little more about that.
Question? Did we get any drawings?
Yeah, there's a set of plans I've submitted, which are called revised site plans.
Okay,
And,
I didn't notice it, but that's all right. Oh, here we are. I got it.
So let me just
We're
explain.
at the public hearing, Judy.
All right.
Okay, so is there any members of the public that have questions for the applicants or the board regarding this application? I hear none. Melissa, are there any letters or phone calls
There
regarding?
was no written communication. I had 3 neighbors call, but no concerns, just curious what was going on.
You know, it's a very logical thing to do. They're trying to put the housing on one lot and the business on the other. So hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second, James, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, aye. Okay, so we have a sketch plan review. And this is Michael Arnstein, special use.
Peter?
Yes?
Can you just approve the application?
Oh, I'm very sorry. I just
Oh,
looked
that's
at my
okay.
sheet right here. I'd like to make a motion to approve the application pending draft resolution.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Lizzie and Barry. I'll be in touch.
Okay, so back on to the Michael Arnstein. This is a sketch plan review for a site plan review and special use permit application to construct and operate a 7-unit motel in 5 buildings in the HC zoning district located at 1, 3, and 5 Calamar Lane in Woodstock. And the representative is Brad Will. And so I'm going to have Brad explain to the board and it's not a public hearing, so just to the board, what they plan to do. But I want to just ask one quick question. What's the difference between short-term rental and a motel? Because if nobody knows that, I'm going to have to say we send this to the ZBA. I don't see the, it's technically, I don't know. We're out of short-term rentals. There's no more short-term rentals allowed. And I mean, they're full. There's no more application.
Well, if you're asking that question and of just in the general attendance here, I would say there is a difference. It is a business. It is you know, really similar to a number of businesses that, you know, make Woodstock what it is, which is a very famous small town, as we all know. Woodstock Way, Woodstock Inn, Morning Glory, the Herwood Inn, Twin Gables. These are businesses. And so I have spoken with the building inspector, and we did review whether he thought any referral to the ZBA was necessary, and he didn't feel it was. That was a verbal confirmation, and I can go back to Butch and confirm that again.
Yeah, but your points will taken, Brad, but those businesses that you mentioned were all existing before the law came in for short-term rentals.
Mhm.
Then we made a law for short-term rentals. And everybody had a chance to apply for that, and the time has run out, and the application, you know, there's no more application. So let me just ask the board members, anybody on the board, John, somebody can tell me why a motel is not a short-term rental?
This is Brian,
Yeah,
Mr. Will, logic, I'm following your logic, but there's also a number of LLCs that also have applied and successfully have followed the rules regarding.
Well, what Brad said, if the zoning enforcement officer is presented this to us and saying that it's different than a short-term rental, okay, but
Oh, that's, Peter, I think you maybe missed my point. Mr. Will's logic was that he's saying, no, this is different because it's a business entity. And I'm saying, no, there's a number of short-term rentals that also are business entities and they follow the rules.
right, they're business, short-term rentals are business. That's why they had to get special permits, because you're doing business on a private land. Yes, Judy?
Well, I think they are different, but I think we're missing, in some ways, missing the point. Before the eruption of Airbnb and other things like that, there were very few places where people took a room or used part of the house that they weren't using during the rest of the year. It wasn't the same situation. Hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts were in a category. And motels and hotels and bed and breakfasts, it seems to me, are still in a category, which is not the same as what we are now calling short-term rentals, even though our law kind of muddies that a little bit.
Can I just interject, Barry Mittenbach, and I'm actually working with Brad on this property.
Sure,
But
Barry.
your code has very specific definitions for a hotel and short-term rentals. And I think this project clearly fits in the hotel. And I think the difference is that the transient housing for short-term is more an accessory to another use as opposed to the primary use.
Thank you. I think that's a good explanation of it, Barry.
Yeah, I would say that's a good
Yeah,
explanation.
and if,
But it's apart from the fact that some LLCs people are calling themselves LLCs for reasons of liability protection that are basically a single family or a single person renting part of their house.
Well, a good point. I mean, the thing is that in the code, a motel is permitted with a special use permit. So it's basically up to the board to either issue or not issue a special use permit.
And on what basis would we say yes or no? Suitability to the neighborhood, yes, among other things.
Well, I mean, the problem is there were four, I think it was 4 full-time living units on that property before it burnt down.
5,
And so, of course, everybody would like to have full-time rental housing available. It's certainly up to the applicant to apply for whatever they would like. But I'm sure the neighborhood would prefer it being long-term rentals. But that's not my call. So anybody on the planning board, please say what you feel about this application. I mean, the drawings and everything are beautiful, believe me. It looks great on paper. My question is just whether this is what we can permit or not. Yes, Judy?
I am not in favor of this. I think it makes a major change in the neighborhood. It also raises a question about our agreement to the bridges over the stream. If somebody is renting the property as a long-term tenant and it's 4 or 5 units, the amount of use they are going to make of the Como walking across that bridge is fairly limited. If it becomes a hotel, I could easily imagine that every person who rents a space is going to go hiking in the Como. And that will be a much more heavy use of the Como property, as well as a lot more disruption for the neighborhood. More cars, more parking needed. I'm not in favor of this change. I think I feel like the camel got its nose under the tent here.
Does anybody know if this was intimated or disclosed to us?
No, it wasn't.
That's what I thought.
I'd like a chance to actually present the
Sure,
drawing.
Brad. Yes, go ahead, Brad.
I'd like to share the screen if that's possible.
Of course.
Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay. So, I've been working with the owner, Michael Arnstein, who purchased the property, the 3 separate properties right now that are contiguous and adjacent properties, which total about 1.5 acres, since late 2020. At that time, it was very clear, and it really hasn't changed since then. It's just, evolved, I would say, is a fair assessment of it. This was going to be a family destination for Michael, and his family has come up here for many, many years. They would usually stay at the Woodstock Lodge and other places in the area. They love Woodstock. They are a part of the community for that very reason, and they were motivated to purchase property here and develop it. So I've been helping him since then. Yes, we did go in last year for wetlands and watercourse permit because I saw that it was necessary because we were on the Tannery Brook, and there are a lot of conditions that we needed to meet, and we did. But all along, I just want to make it clear, especially for Judy, that we have been talking about multiple units here, residential. It was not decided. We weren't presenting the whole site plan at that time. We were talking about replacing a structure that was badly deteriorated that has since been raised, along with the other ones that were all damaged by, 3 of them by fire. The 4th, which was the cabin overhanging the Tannery Brook, was taken down. It was unsafe. We've designed we started by designing the American Craftsman cottage there, and the suspension footbridges. We've been working with companies to engineer them so that they're properly and safely installed. So since that time, we had buildings and footprints shown on these properties, these 3 parcels that we would propose to combine, which is a fairly simple procedure with the county, the county clerk. And we have decided that the best course of action is to, what we're proposing is to have a low density assortment of really beautifully designed houses and buildings and townhouses and cottages that can really be part of the fabric of the town and the village. As I noted earlier, there are a number of places to stay, and people, Woodstock is in demand. It's whether they were long-term rentals or not, they are places where people can come and stay and enjoy Woodstock. So I'm just going to go through this slideshow. I'll keep it as brief as I can. Thank you for your patience. So this is the site plan. You have all the drawings. A lot of care was taken in terms of keeping the area very open, keeping the parking right towards the edge where people had parked when it was the 4 previous buildings, and they would actually park along Calamar Lane itself. There was nothing really defined about the parking back then, and here it is defined, and I think a more organized recommendation of how the parking can work. You see the 2 suspension footbridges down towards the bottom of the sheet. The American, the Craftsman Cottage is close to the water and has floodplain mitigation built in, and that was part of the Wetlands and Watercourse permit that was awarded in January. So the other buildings, aside from the little house on the prairie or the brook, are behind that base flood elevation, so they don't require that mitigation effort. That's why we were able to make the stone house that's just to the west of the Craftsman house a 100% accessible unit. Excuse me. And then have the other 3 buildings going around, so keeping that area very open. So when you're coming down Calamar Lane, you don't see a big house or anything that's imposing. So this is just a key to the different drawings that follow, and I won't spend a lot of time. I'll just run through them. This is the Craftsman Cottage that was originally proposed as part of the Wetlands Watercourse permit. That replaces the cabin that overhung the bank of the Tannery Brook. This has been pushed back about 25 feet from that structure. The elevations be stone and wood siding, metal roof, a nice, well-proportioned cottage. The colonial, what I'm calling the Colonial Dutch, this is the accessible unit with a studio arrangement with accessible bathroom and kitchen and tall living area with a front deck that faces the Tannery Brook. This is also behind the base flood elevation, so there's no need for flood plain mitigation. These are the elevations for that building. This is the larger stone house that's to the pushed back farther from the one I just showed you. This is also 2 stories, single bedroom.
Are you changing the slide, Brad, or is this all still on the?
He thinks he is, but I'm only seeing the site.
We only
plan.
have the site plan up. I don't see any cursor moving or anything.
That's why I'm asking.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Screen sharing is paused for some reason. I'm sorry. I don't know why it's paused.
But this,
I don't know why I'm not on it.
yeah, so, but Mr. Will, if I may, I mean, what I do see.
I'd like to figure out this
Palomar
problem.
Lane Motel. So you're telling us this is now going to be a motel, correct?
Yes, yes, correct.
Okay. So
Um, I'm trying to figure out why you can't see this. You don't, what do you see now, folks?
Now we see you. You've turned off screen sharing. I mean, we see everybody. Try it again.
Let's try it again.
You may not have picked the window. You know, you need to have access to the windows to open this PowerPoint.
Okay.
Click on the PowerPoint one. It's the top one, I think. I suspect that it's the top one.
Okay, what do you see now?
Now you've got the layout for the site again.
The site plan.
Yeah,
Do you see anything different now?
No.
Site
no,
plan.
we see, yeah. And our time is limited here, so, you know, it's.
Okay, well, I don't know why you can't see this. This is very strange.
But I think, Brad, the main issue, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak for the rest of the board. I love the layout, and I'm sure it's gonna look just gorgeous. It's gonna be a very nice place. But back to the question, and what was just brought up by Barry, that part of our short-term rental laws do address non-occupied, multiple roomed short-term rentals. I don't see the difference between that and a motel. It's non-owner occupied and it's multiple rooms within the building. Like Judy said, I just think there's an overlap in trying to distinguish between those things. And I think what the neighbors are saying that they love it would be made nice with nice buildings, but they're objecting to a motel in their midst there. I think the original plan to have several nice buildings was beautiful, but I just think there's a resistance to a motel, but maybe I'm wrong.
Totally talk. We're muted.
No, I don't think you're wrong, Peter. I think, you know, this was presented to us as this was going to be the family dwelling with multiple, you know, buildings, and obviously that's changed, and they can do that if they want, but I'm gonna base my decision based on this new information.
Brad, the screens are changing now, just FYI.
Okay, well, good.
You got it now.
I'm showing you some, okay, I'm gonna start up here. So you see the site plan. Everybody see the site plan?
Yep.
Yep.
Do you see this sheet? It's a key sheet.
Hey, Brad, give me 1 second. I see people raising your hand, but this is the initial meeting for Calamar Lane, and we need to give Brad time just to show the planning board. So unless you're a planning board member, I see it, but there's nothing I can really do. And planning board members, you guys can just speak. You have personal, just so you know. Thank you. Continue, Brad.
All right, I'm gonna go through this really fast. So these are just some of the buildings. This is the American Craftsman replaced the cabin that was overhanging the Tannery Brook. These are the plans. These are the elevations. Do you see them?
Yes.
Yes.
This is the ADA unit, which is a stone, modeled on a Dutch house with a stone cladding. It has a ground floor studio with accessible kitchen and bath and an accessible path to it. Elevations of same. It gives you a sample of the stone siding and metal roof. This is the other stone house. We're calling it the Dutch, the garden house. Garden cottage, rather. Elevations of same. It has a roof deck and 2 stories with a 1-bedroom upstairs, a living space downstairs. This is the 3-unit townhouse, 2 stories, 1-bedroom upstairs, living space downstairs, basement with a service bar in the back part of it. I mean, service area like laundry and so forth. That's the elevation. This would be facing the garden, 2-story with a balcony. This is the access to the basement on the back side. Has a vaulted ceiling, vaulted roof structure. This is the Little House. It's modeled on the Little House on the Brook, Prairie. I call it Little House on the Brook, but it's just like the building that was in the show from many years ago. It's a favorite of Michael's and his wife's, and they thought it'd be really pretty neat to build it here, and I agree with them. So that's it. It's an authentic reproduction, but raised up because it was part of that wetlands and watercourse permit. So these really fast, just some aerial views showing how the garden area in the center really dominates. The parking would have a lot of foliage and trees planted around it for screening purposes. There would be a total of 14 or 15 stalls with an ADA accessible stall to get to the ADA unit. Another view from the south looking to the north. So that's Calamar Lane up at the top. That's the townhouse, Craftsman Cottage, Little House, and the stone buildings. This is the entrance when you're coming down Calamar Lane. You wouldn't see a lot of buildings so much, but I mean, I think the buildings will be very pleasant to look at and experience, but that's the opening. And it would be a permeable material for the parking and the access. This is just a bird's eye view flying straight overhead, looking at it with the Tannery Brook running along the north part. So the Cabot property conservation easement is to the north of this. Another view of the gardens, just a lot of open space. It's we're not determined on whether these are all raised bed planters, but we're showing that for now just to give it some context and scale. This is a view from up above at the roof deck of the larger stone unit, looking towards the Tannery Brook with the cottage to the right and the little house in the distance to the mid left. That's the presentation. I hope we have a chance to dig into this a lot. I think it has a lot of great things going for it. I hear some of the concerns. I want to have that conversation, that dialogue. I know that Michael does. Again, he's looking at this as a family business where he would, select one of these units where he and his family can be and manage this property as a motel. And I think it is perfectly suitable for this location in the Hamlet Commercial District in the heart of Woodstock, with a number of motel options and hotel options and B&Bs available. One more with 7 more units, or 6 if you take out where the family would be living. It would be filled and occupied, and I think help the businesses. And this is really very consistent with how we started. It just ends up that we decided that proposing this as a motel was something we thought was very positive. Thank you.
Well, Brad, I gotta say, as usual, your architecture is gorgeous. It's fantastic. It's a beautiful design. It's very nicely done. I think that what the planning board has to grapple with is the neighborhood and what is conducive within the neighborhood. And I think what's got it, the stumbling block is the motel part of
I
it.
have a further question or two, Peter.
Sure, go ahead, Judy.
First of all, according to the zoning law, the area and bulk regulations for a motel or hotel shall be increased by 1,500 square feet for each guest room provided. So I'm wondering whether this plan meets
we're well
that.
under that, Judy. It's not even close. In fact, I did a study of this, and believe it or not, this 1.5 acres, which is a large parcel when you think about it for the downtown, could yield 17 units on it.
Okay.
We are proposing 7.
Here's my other question, and this is one for the board to consider. The Sawkill has a 100-foot buffer. The old buildings obviously were grandfathered, but whether we should be allowing new
That's not the
buildings to be
Sawkill.
built
That's not
during,
the Sawkill.
Sawkill, this is the Tannery Brook.
That's not the Sawkill. It's got a 20
Well,
foot buffer, but
I don't think it's a 20-foot buffer, but I can
20 or 25, I'm not sure.
I'll tell you in a minute.
But the next issue is going to be that hotel or motel requires a 100-foot setback for parking.
That's not, this is not next to HR or R1 or any of those districts. That's only when it's adjacent to a district other than HC. That's the HC on both sides and across the street.
What was the waterfall way? That required.
That was HR, and that did have to go to zoning because it was in HR. This is an
Buffer.
HC. This is different. Doesn't require that.
I'll have to check that.
My information says that's a 90-foot buffer.
For what, Judy?
We just redid the maps, and I will check the old one with Melissa, but I believe that stream has a 90-foot buffer.
Well, of course,
We have to find out. We have to check.
we're back to
there's
the old
also-
issue. You have to ask the wetlands and water course inspector. But,
This is Brian Normoff.
hi, Brian.
You know, I'm so tired of being presented one thing and then having it change. And this is the oldest trick in the book. And the planning board is not a rubber
No.
stamp for whatever people want to do. This
We're
is
not
my
talking-
personal opinion, but I'm tired of it. So,
All right, any board members, because this is just between the board, this is just a sketch plan review and we've used up our time. So if any other board member has, yes, Stuart?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Brad, you mentioned the ADA unit, and how many of these buildings are required to be ADA, accessible? Is it just one or?
One for this count. Yeah, it's under 25 units, it's one.
One, only one?
Probably correct.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but it sounds
Yeah.
like what
I followed the codes.
Yeah, Brad met with Butch. Yeah, it's one.
We
Okay,
reviewed
well,
it.
thank you. And my next comment is really a comment, and Peter raised the concern about the impact on the neighborhood and all. I would want to withhold expressing any opinion on that until we hold a public hearing at which people who live in the neighborhood can come forward and express themselves as to how they feel about the project. I think it's premature to reach a conclusion on that or even express a conclusion on that until we've heard from the neighbors. And so I would welcome the opportunity to get to a public hearing and see what everybody has to say and what the response is. That's, to me, the way that we should go in terms of process.
Absolutely, Stuart.
Okay, the next point I wanted to make is in terms of the comparison between motels and short-term rentals and the codes and so on. In the short-term rental law, it talks about short-term rentals being accessory or use or supplemental to, a room in a private home or a habitable accessory structure. And I'm not sure.
There's also non-owner occupied multi-use as short-term rentals.
I would be reluctant to reach a conclusion on that, at least without hearing from our attorney on it. Because it seems to me, this is not really a room in a private home scenario, that it's the typical short-term rental. This is more of a motel within the definition of the code, but and the motel provisions were not eliminated by adoption of the short-term rental. They exist side by side, so we have to figure that out. And since the zoning enforcement officer the building inspector has given us that, presumably he's reviewed that question, but that's just a comment that I have. What's the story with the septic or sewer? Are they all these units gonna hook up to the sewer main that's over there?
Yeah, they have, they're all on the municipal sewer. The sewer main actually runs underneath the properties, not just this, but other properties to the east and west. It diverges off of Tinker Street. It's kind of funny, it just takes a big U there.
Well,
But
I saw that on your drawing that, it's
Yeah.
delineated, and that's fine, but.
yeah, it was interesting to discover that, but it would hook into new septic tanks that were properly sized, and we would replace the water line really from Tinker Street. That's made of an outdated material.
So capacity for, hooking up is not an issue in terms.
Not an issue at all. No.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
have a small idea. I know Stuart had mentioned lawyer. I know there's concerns, and I know we've had a lot of comments. What if we collect escrow and have John Lyons look at the application and report back to us? And that's that's how we can start. That, it's up to you, board, but I'm hearing lots of concerns and
Excellent. I agree, Melissa, because we need to wrap this up. I agree with Stuart's point that there could be if the zoning board, I mean, if the building inspector has approved this use as a zoning enforcement officer, then that's what comes before us. So I get that. So I think Stuart's also point is, let's get the public involved when we have our public hearing. And so if nothing else, I'd like to move on to our next case. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep, thank you, Brett.
Thank you,
See you
Mr.
in the
Wills.
next case.
Okay, so now we have review and discussion. FAM Acres LLC, planning board case 21-1226. Is a wetlands watercourse permit number 21-045. And this is a presentation by applicant review of MDR, a memorandum of a subdivision lot line revision, including wetlands and watercourse permit applications for a 147 acre lot into 12 lots in the R3 zoning district located at 1883 Glasgow Turnpike in Woodstock. And the reps are Melissa Meyer, John Amura, Barry Medenbach, Alex Scott, Buddy and Fender, and Brad Will of Ashokan Architecture, and Fred Meyer. So I guess this is to go to Matt to present his.
actually, Peter, we're gonna let Melissa and Barry, their team present first really quick for under 10 minutes, just to let us know how this plan changed because they haven't been back in quite a while. And then Matt is supposed to present, but I don't see him yet. So we're gonna hand it over to them to just give us a quick rundown. Is that all right? That was
Okay.
my plan.
Okay.
All right,
Okay,
Sam,
let's do it.
team.
Melissa?
Yes.
Thanks, Brad. I think I'm going to be presenting the slideshow, and I think this time I got it under control. So
Okay.
Barry's going to be doing, or actually Alec, I think is going to be doing the talking, but somebody will tell me when I can start.
All right, team. Bam Acres team, you're up.
All right, thank you. So we certainly look forward to, answering questions, hearing Matt's review of his memo and getting valuable feedback from the board. But like Melissa mentioned, we just want to give a brief presentation because it has been a while. So my name is Alec Glad from the law firm Cuddy and Fader, and we are the attorneys for the applicant. And I'll just be introducing the rest of the project team and giving you a brief overview of what has changed. Also on the call, we do have Barry Medenbach and Medenbach and Eggers. He'll review the plat in more detail. We do also have Fred Mayer. He is a water resources and water restoration specialist, and also the brother of the FAM Acres principal, Melissa Mayer. And as you know, we do have Brad Will on as part of the application team, and he'll finish off with some renderings. And we also have Jonah Mensch, who is the FAM Acres project manager. So Melissa and Fred are brother and sister, and then Jonah is Melissa's daughter. So, and Melissa lives in town. So this is a family. This is a family that will live in this subdivision when it's approved. And so we just want to make the point that this isn't just some faceless developer trying to make a profit. They are members of the community and are invested in Woodstock. So just briefly, to go over some of the high-level project changes, we were last before the board on November 4th of 2021. So it's been a long time, and we resubmitted on April 26th of this year. And we really took that time to review the questions and concerns expressed by the board and evaluate the proposal. And what happened is the scope of the project has been reduced. We ended up dropping 2 lots. So now we're proposing only 10 new building lots, and there's also the existing residence with access off of Glasgow Turnpike that will remain. So there's a total of 11 residential lots proposed as part of the subdivision. And these lots range from 4 to 22 acres. So there's an average lot size of 13.3 acres. And also we added some ecologically thoughtful measures to the plans. And I just want to highlight 3 for you quickly. First is there will be a 27.3 acre no build parcel, and all 27 acres of this parcel would be restricted from future development period. So nothing will be built on it into perpetuity. The second is that we are proposing to restrict the future developability of 69% of the land area included in the project site, which we've identified in the project on the plan set as conservation areas. And when Brad shares the screen, you'll be able to see those, and Barry will outline further where they are. So this amounts to us conserving 101 acres of the total 147 acre site, which is a significant amount. And then third, we added some wildlife crossings under the main roadway, so there'll be 3 there. And then also there's 2 beneath the minor road that are serving lots 10 and 11, and Barry can show those to you when he goes through the plan quick. And just, although these are new conservation measures, these are just in addition to, and are intended to supplement the already conservation-minded design of the project. For example, we never proposed any disturbance to a wetland. We're using an existing and old access utility road for the quarry. There's no development on steep slopes. A major portion of the site will remain wooded, and it's less dense than the surrounding areas. And finally, we just want to note that, you know, we've seen a lot of articles in the news about this being the largest subdivision in the last 20 years, but we really like to think of this as the largest land conservation proposed as part of a subdivision by a private applicant. We are offering to place over 100 acres in conservation. And just to give you a real world reference, the Como property is only 76 acres. So we're proposing to conserve more than that. But I would like to ask Brad to share his screen and turn it over to Barry now so we can walk you through the plat in a little bit more detail.
Okay, I'll put it up, and then Barry, you can take it over.
Yes.
Oops.
Never say oops in the operating room.
All right,
Okay.
there we go.
You see it?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. So I'm just going to walk through these sheets that illustrate what we've done. We've put a lot of work into this over the almost year. We've had our wetlands biologists come out and flag all the wetlands, and we've surveyed and mapped it, and we put it on the plan. And we identified all the test holes for septic systems that meet health department requirements, and that plan is before them now. They're reviewing it. They've been out to the site, and they've basically approved all the site areas we have. We're just waiting for them to approve the maps. We also met with the County Highway Department for the entrance, and they pretty much selected where our road entrance intersects Glasgow Turnpike. And let's go to the next sheet, maybe, Brad. So this is the overall development. This is kind of like the index sheet. So if we can go to sheet 2. There we go. So this shows a little more detail in the site. So the darker green area is all the area that we're going to put in conservation area, and it's really quite substantial. It includes all the wetlands, a 100-foot buffer, and then quite a bit of additional land. We had some parcels of land, like if you look at lot 6 on the north end there was a substantial piece of land up there that is usable, but we would have had to cross the wetlands to access it. We didn't have access directly off of Plockman Lane up there. You can see it's not that far from it. And so we decided to just put that in a conservation area, no further development of it. And then also the land all the way to the west there, lot 12, you're just seeing part of it on this, but it's a 27-acre parcel. It has wetlands on it, but it also has some upland areas that are somewhat usable. We decided to put all that in the conservation area. So, you know, we made a big effort here to just identify the areas, particularly along the road where the houses would go and what area would be necessary to build those houses in developing the plans. So let's go to the next sheet.
Barry, can I just mention?
Sure.
Where you see those two, it's kind of hard to see at the scale, but where you see the 2 rectangles on each of the properties, the one of them, the darker one, that's essentially ground. That's a septic area that's underneath the subterranean.
Yeah, let's go. So this is really, it's hard to look at this scale on the screen, but this is basically the existing condition map. You can see all those little, they just look like dots at this point along the blue area. The blue area represents the wetlands, and those dots are the actual flags that we mapped, that we located to identify the boundary of that wetland. And then we added to it the 100-foot setback, which is the other line that, maybe Brad could point to. It's a dashed line that goes all around. So this was basically the base map that we were using to identify where we could build. It also has the old, I don't know if you want to call it logging road, mining road. There's an old woods road that runs through the property that for most of it, that's, somewhat cleared now. And we designed our road to take advantage of that route and put the road there and create the lot access off of that road. So we can go to the next sheet. All right, so what's it? This shows a little more detail in the preliminary plot. This basically shows all the lot dimensions. There's also a chart. I think if you scroll down, maybe what sheet?
Would you like me to zoom in?
Yeah, actually, I meant to do it on sheet 2. Just go back to sheet 2 real quick, because that's shows what I wanted to illustrate. There's a chart on the bottom of that. Yeah, back one more sheet. No.
Oh, I'm
back.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Back sheet 2. Keep going. All right. Yeah. Now scroll down to the bottom of that sheet. Yeah, if you could blow that up a little bit so you can read that little chart on the left there. It lists each of the lots. And you could see, yeah, maybe just a little bit bigger, at least on my screen. Where we
I
have,
can't get bigger than that.
yeah.
We
Okay. Well, you
can,
can
we
see,
can make it bigger on our own.
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So you can see lot 1 there. It's like a 4 point, I think it's 3 acres.
Yeah.
4.3.
Yeah. And then you see the buildable area this is the existing lot with the existing house out on the road. So most of that lot is a meadow. It's an open lot area. Yeah, there it is there. And it has the existing house, has the barn on it, has a pool on it. And basically there's no new construction proposed for that. Lot 2, you could see it's 7.3 acres. The buildable area of it that we mapped out is 2.5, but we're just showing a disturbance of a half an acre. And you can go down and you can see, the various lot sizes. They, go up to, you can see lot 6 is 22 acres. Lot 7 is 10. So you can see all the various sizes, and then the buildable areas of each one of those. Those would be the areas that are not restricted by the conservation area. And then we show the actual disturbance necessary to develop a house, a septic system, and, have some extra area certainly for the driveway and some accessory, like if somebody wants to put a pool in or something. And you could see that the total disturbance there is 10.3 acres, and that includes the road, 4.1 acres. And that total percentage, if you look over to the right, it's really just 7% of the total lot that would have any disturbance. So let's jump ahead to the other maps. I think we were on sheet 4 or 5.
Do you want me to stop here, Barry?
Yeah, so this sheet just shows, let me see, what sheet are you on? It's
This is 5, number 5. It's the septic plan.
No, you want 4. Keep coming, go.
Step beyond, next one?
Literally, keep going, yeah. All right, no, maybe you're right, so go back. Yeah, all right, so here it is. This is what we put together for what does you call it? Each house has, if you blow it up some, you could see that we show where we can, yeah, just a little more. Yeah, so there's a lot of detail on this plan. It has all the septic definitions. Yeah, now that you're getting in there, it also shows the limit of disturbance that goes around those houses and around the septic systems and the driveways. And it has all the size of the septic systems. They've all been sized based on the soils. You can see where the individual soil maps are, the holes are rather. You can see them, they look like little plugs there. They're like dots. Yeah, there you go. You got one there. There's quite a bit of work put on here on siting the houses and the septic systems, and that's what this sheet is all about. If you go to the next sheet, this also shows where some of the drainage is. Now, the drainage, we're still working on that as far as designing all the details, but we just have some concept into how we're going to handle the drainage. But this is a sheet that just shows more detail for the health department. And if you move on, the rest of these are to another sheet. So this is
Steep slopes.
so this is this just shows the total all sites of the with the topography and this is what's the is it, I'm confused by what sheet this is.
Steep slopes.
All right, very nice presentation. Before the board, any other board members make a mention, speak up on it, I'd like to mention a couple of things. Lot 12, you're saying is to be non-buildable, but we can't create a lot that does not have access or does not have Board of Health approval. You can't create a lot without access.
Yeah, they all have access and they will all have Board of Health approval.
How do you get access to lot 12?
You want to go open up one of the plans? I see the.
There's a
plan.
road out there? I didn't see the
Yeah,
road.
we are building a road to town road standards. There's a major road, maybe I should have talked about that a little bit, that we're gonna come off of Glasgow Turnpike and we're gonna run it in and we're gonna have a turnaround at the very end. And that road is gonna meet the major standards for a town road.
It enters lot 12? That road enters lot 12?
Well, let's open, I forget which is lot 12. Can we blow that up? Can we blow the screen back up? For some reason, I'm not.
You mean
I'm not
go
looking at the
back?
whole map. Did something happen here with the?
So if I could just maybe address that, maybe I can help shed some light on this.
There we go.
So the reason that you want to have a road to have access to each lot is so that under the state statute 280A, you can get a building permit, because under the state statute, if you don't have roadway frontage, you can't be issued a building permit. But that's really not a concern here because we're proposing to never allow any development on this
But you
lot.
want to create a lot. We can't create a lot that doesn't have road access.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah,
Yeah, and under your local code, and I can also, circulate the provision to your attorney or whoever, but your local code does also allow you to create the lot 12 as we're proposing it. But we're happy to have that discussion.
I'm sorry, wait a minute, I'm sorry. You cannot create a lot in Woodstock without access and septic approval. Period.
I have a question.
That's the facts.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure, Judy. Judy?
One of I think this is a wonderful plan on the whole. The only concern I have is management of the conserved land. In the case of lot 12, if it were a conservation easement, would it be permitted to do it without a road and a septic?
Well, Judy, I'd like to address this whole conservation thing, because you have to understand that all the wetlands and the 100-foot buffers and the streams in their buffers are protected under the Woodstock Wetlands and Watercourse Protection Standards. You can't make that anything else. You can't make that.
There's a lot of property to it, Peter.
I understand you can make lands that aren't included in the town protection as a conservation easement, but the wetlands and the watercourses and their buffers have town codes that are applied to them. So whatever you make is a conservation easement, whatever restrictions you put in that conservation easement only can apply to those that are outside of wetlands and their buffers.
Well, can I
You're
just,
making conservation easement, including the wetlands. It's not true. Those wetlands are already protected.
yes, Peter, that is correct. But what we're going to do is we're going to make it more obvious by mapping it on a file map that gets filed in the county clerk's office, and it'll all be mentioned in all the deeds where they're sold off, and the people will be quite obviously shown that all this area is protected, as opposed to them having to find that out on their own. We're also proposing to put markers up along these properties, quite obvious ones that stick out of the ground about 4 feet. I think Brad has that. Yeah.
So Barry, in 10 years from now, will those markers be there? In 10
Yeah,
years from now,
why
every
not?
marker will be there?
No, and I know the question comes up because I've done this in other towns. They say, well, who's going to enforce it? I'll tell you who's going to enforce it, the neighbors. they're all gonna be buying property here because it's in a conservation
Yeah,
area. and
I get that, Barry, that right now, that's what they're gonna do, but I'm talking 10, 15 years from now. What if somebody sells one of those lots, which they legally can do? It's different people, different owners, different ideas.
Well,
No,
I'll let the
in the
lawyer
chain of
talk
title.
about what kind of enforcement we can have on that.
Yeah, so it'll all be contained in the chain of title. So each subsequent owner will be on notice and they will be subject to the same restrictions.
Okay, I'm just saying that I love the building envelope, and Judy and I have talked about that at great length. The building envelope is critical, but it has to be able to find those lines 10, 15 years from now. And as a surveyor, all I can say is if it's in state plane, anybody can go back out there and locate where those markers were. But without it, 20 years from now, 15 years from now, I'll bet you there's tennis courts and swimming pools and everything else in the protected areas because there's nothing to stop it.
Well, I think, Peter, what you're seeing, and I've been practicing this kind of work in this area for close to 40 years now. And the people moving here and the people who are building are much, much more conscious about protecting land.
Now,
I
what
hear
about 20
people,
years from
I
now?
hear somebody cutting a dead tree down and all the neighbors call the building inspector and make a fuss over it. People don't get away with, and just jokingly saying, 40 years ago, the policy was if you can't see it from a road, you don't need a permit. That's so far out of here, so far back in our history. You can't do anything without a permit anymore, and everybody knows that, and everybody's being a watchdoog and being conscious of what's
I
happening.
agree with Judy.
People are
It's an
coming. People are
excellent- I
coming
agree
in
with you.
here.
It's an
People are coming
excellent-
in here to buy to appreciate the nature. That they're not going to come in here and run roughshod over it. They're here because of what it offers. So the folks that come in here and build their houses. And by the way, what you're seeing here is a dispersion of those houses. These are 2-story, not necessarily going to be built that way, not necessarily going to be in white. But if I made them in a darker color, a stained wood or stone siding, they would almost be invisible. So it blends in very carefully. Trees along the roads. We're not going to have any lawns that come up to the roads, Judy. This is going to be a highly treed. There are more trees on this property that are going to stay there that have ever been there before, for that matter, because they're going to be new plantings. So the only thing you see open here is the existing field and meadow up behind the barn and the farmhouse, and that's existing. This had been mined and quarried and farmed for wood over the millennia, the decades rather. So this is a very light touch and I think thoughtful way to use this
I
land.
totally agree, Brad.
And and I would add that it's also infill. There are neighborhoods on all sides of this, and there are some much smaller properties, much more density outside of this area. And I'm going to go to a couple of slides that show that. So the buildings here, the parcels here are over 13 acres in average. So this is not going to be a dense development at all. It's going to be it's going to be a neighborhood. It's going to have almost no traffic coming in. The bigger roads are Glasgow, for that matter. This is a very small.
Let me point another thing out too that addresses directly what Peter was bringing up, that the existing wetlands and buffers already on the books as being protected. Well, we're gonna have, there's 53 acres of wetland, including its 100-foot buffer on this site. We're gonna have 101 acres of conservation areas. We're almost doubling that area. So we're creating bigger buffers in many of the areas to the wetlands. That's going to be conservation, and that'll be the law that goes along with all these lots. And I think
I totally agree.
Right. This conservation area 1 is larger than the Comoe property.
Hold on a second. And I agree with Judy exactly that this is a very nicely, well-designed, well-thought-out plan. Such well thought out that our town has been working on creating critical environmental areas that would require what you guys are doing. So you're actually doing what we're in the future trying to get any development to do. So hats off to you guys. You've done a beautiful job.
It is
And
preserving
I only
land.
have a few questions, and maybe when the planning board members have other questions, but those, I commend you on it. It's a fabulous job of protecting the environment and making it work. You've done a great job.
Thank you.
Those two questions. One was
This subdivision preserves more land than the entire Sloan Gorge. the conservation area number 1 is larger than the Como property alone. So, and as Barry pointed out, this is over 2/3 preserved and conserved, and the markers will survive. They will be made of recycled material. They're not going to go away. They're going to be planted very carefully and on very regular frequencies around these borders.
Well, I
And I think so. This is what it looks like. Just
Yeah.
one example.
It's beautiful.
can I
love
just
your
finish the-
concept. Are
Yeah,
there
can I
any
just
other
finish
members
this
of
up,
the
please?
planning board have questions for Barry or regarding?
I still do, but I would like to wait until other people speak.
Anybody else on the board have questions for Barry or
I just want to mention, guys, that Matt's not here, and I'm not sure why. I spoke to him on Monday, so we're going to continue, but I just wanted to give you all a heads up.
all right, well, unless any other members of the board have questions, I commend them. It's a beautiful plan. It's well thought out. And we'll get it to a public hearing. I still have a question that lot 12 can't be created without a road to it, but that we'll work on that.
Oh,
And Barry addressed my question or my issue that lands that are already protected under wetlands law have their own codes. And if they're going to make conservation easements around that, including that, fantastic, great.
I think this was good for FAM to come back, to bring the conversation back to the table. We do need for Matt to go over his memo with you guys, because I think he can address some of your questions. Unfortunately, this was scheduled forever ago. I don't know what happened. Hopefully he's okay. But, public hearing, we should hold off until we have more information.
Good.
Stuart's got his hand up, and then I do.
Okay, Stuart?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. My question is, what can be put on record in terms of the county clerk, in terms of covenants or restrictions or records, so that future purchasers looking at buying properties will be on notice of the conservation restrictions that are incorporated in the plan?
Good point.
So there'll be notes on the plat that is filed and recorded in the county, which will be a publicly accessible document. And then also every deed for the property will also include covenants and restrictions, restricting development only to the buildable area.
And will those refer back to the filed plat?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
They will.
All right, I raise that because, it's a concern that as Peter says, 15 years down the road, as subsequent purchases and all, you want to make sure that they're on notice in the chain, when they do their title search, that they're on notice of this issue. That's all.
Exactly. Thanks, Stuart. Good point.
I see Fred, and he's on their team. So Fred, if
All right, Judy?
I just wanted really to introduce myself as, I'm the brother and hopefully future resident of Woodstock. It's been kind of a family dream to have us all closer than opposite coasts. So Peter, I really appreciate the fact that you did see how, my sister and I and Jonah spent a lot of time walking this site and walked through all these wetlands and around them, and appreciate it and appreciate your thoughtfulness, because I don't know, many of you know me, but I've been doing this, been restoring heavily impacted watersheds for about 23 years. That's been my career. So I'm looking forward to being out here, and I want to make sure we do whatever is necessary. Luckily we have folks like Alec on our team to make sure that these are properly written into the deed so they don't get impacted into the future, because that's not the objective of this project.
Mr. Meyer, this is Brian Normal. I have one question. I appreciate your comments, but why wasn't this included in the first proposal?
What's that? What wasn't proposed in the first proposal? We've
Everything
always had
everything that is in this proposal.
Well, I think the first time it was really, Barry, correct me for.
Yeah, let me
wrong on how it was put.
respond to that. This has always been the plan, is to conserve most of this, but we didn't have all the necessary mapping when we first came in. We just had some approximate mapping for the wetlands. So we spent all this time is mapping the wetlands and seeing how extensive it is. And quite honestly, it turned out to be more wetlands than I originally thought there was. And so then we had the discussion among ourselves. Well, what do? We can't really cross these wetlands. We don't want to propose that, having driveways cross them. So we have these other lands that, what are we going to do about them? And so the decision made, let's put it all in the conservation area. So it's just the way the project evolves some, but from the very beginning, we talked about making this a bit of a conservation, development with protected wetlands and sensitive areas.
I appreciate that explanation by both of you, but I walked this site and actually I spent time with the family a little bit and I just don't recall. And I understand Fred's background, but I just don't remember this being brought up until there was pushback on this.
Well, I don't think that matters. If they responded to our pushback by a better plan, let's celebrate.
Exactly.
No, I would like to speak to some of the issues here. First of all, it seems to me if there is a problem with the lot 12, that may be something we need to send to the zoning. Sorry, I'm forgetting the name of our committee, but
Okay,
We're happy to look at that further, certainly.
I mean, it seems to me that this has to be solvable. Second of all, the new zoning recommendations that are coming from the Housing Oversight Task Force would specify precisely this kind of a project, handled in precisely this way, except for the question of how the conservation areas will be managed. And that is something that Alec has spoken to somewhat. I think the question of Lot 12 falls in that category too. But those of us who are going to be meeting with Nan next 2 weeks from now to look at the proposed new zoning, this is an example of the kind of thing that the new zoning would require. So getting our heads around it would be very valuable.
Peter?
Yes, Stuart?
Yeah, so with respect to conservation easements, I've heard discussions in other areas where conservation easements go into effect and they're managed by some kind of entity. I'm wondering, why does the applicant need to retain ownership of those areas that are going to be designated non-buildable?
It's not the same thing, Stuart.
Let me finish my question. Would there be any consideration to putting those areas in the hand of a dedicated management entity like the Land Conservancy or somebody like that who could police, the non-development of those areas?
Okay.
I don't know if it's done or if it's a good idea or bad idea. I just put it out there.
I think
I
we have
think
to
that's
go with
some-
Melissa's plan here to continue this when we have Matt, because we do have to get to another public hearing.
Okay.
yeah, I will, Sam Akers, I want to thank you for showing up. I'm
Yep.
not sure what happened with Matt's schedule. I think this was good. At least we went over the plan and I will work on rescheduling as soon as I get to talk to them.
Very good, very good.
So I think just to wrap this up too, we're preparing a response to Matt's letter, and it's unfortunate
Perfect.
he's not here tonight. And then can we come back to the next planning board meeting to discuss that?
August 18th is booked.
No, in September. I would think it was too quick for August, but in
Okay,
September.
well, you said next, so you know how my brain works.
Next available.
Yes, I'll get you back as soon as I can. We'll aim for September. All right, Bear?
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, all right, Barry, thank you very much for the presentation and a great
Thank
job
you.
you guys are doing. It's
Thanks for
very
the
good.
compliments.
Thank
Yes,
you.
it's very nice.
Appreciate it.
Thank you
As
for your
Judy, as
time.
Judy said, that's what we're trying to get to happen with every development. So you've done a great job. Okay, so we have to move on to our 7:30. Yep, yes?
I'm laughing.
Oh, okay. To our case, which is a recessed public hearing. So this is the 7:30 Lower Uwasaka Planning Board Case 22-1233. There's a recessed public hearing for a subdivision application to subdivide a 22.4 acre lot into two parcels of 16.4 and 6 acres in the R8 and R5 zoning district located at 371 Yerry Hill Road in Woodstock. And the rep is Jeffrey Hogan of Fatoris and Conrad. So make a motion to open the recessed public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor? Okay. I just, before I turn it over to Jeffrey, I just want to say that it was recessed because majority of the board, of the planning board had questions about water resources. And so we've reopened it. And we have gotten letters from the DeGrasse and the neighbors regarding some of the issues there. So I just want to quickly address two things. Again, in order for the planning board to create a lot, we need two things. We need access and Board of Health approval from the county. This was presented to us with access, so that's why we have gone forward with it. There seems to be a question over the access, which the DeGrasse have brought up and their lawyer has brought up. And when we get questions over legal right-of-way, legal accesses, that's not something that we can solve. That becomes a civil issue, and in this case might have to go to the ZBA. But as far as wells, I know that everybody is concerned about water resources. But I just have to be honest that anybody who owns land in this town can drill a well. That's the way it is. And you can't stop anybody from building a house because they can't put a well in. So I'm going to turn this over to Jeff to explain. This is a public hearing. So Jeff, if you would like to explain to the public and what it is you propose to do.
Good evening, everyone. I'll share my screen if,
We're good.
let's see. Can everyone see that?
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Okay. Again, my name is Jeff Hogan. I'm with Pretorius and Conrad. I'm an engineer from Saugerties. We have land surveying as well. And we're working with Lori and also Neil Grant, who's looking to purchase 6 acres at the northeast corner of Lori's 22-acre property. Lori's going to maintain about 16.4 acres of land with her existing house and her existing driveway. Neil's looking to purchase 6 acres off of an existing 16-foot wide right-of-way from Ohio Mountain Road past the DeGraff residences and up the hill. There's a meadow with some small pine trees, very nice flat plateau. We've had the health department out there. Plans have been submitted. I received a letter back from them yesterday indicating that they'll have a response as to my application within the next 10 days. So we'll know whether the permit's been issued or not. I don't anticipate that that'll be an issue. The 16-foot right-of-way continues up the hill to lands owned by currently Marlin Park. All of this property, as we were told by the family, was once owned by all of the, by the DeGraff family, and it's, different pieces have been sold off over the years. I did some research on the 16-foot right-of-way, kind of going back as far as I could find. The attorney for the DeGraffs also reference the deeds for when 2 of the parcels were initially subdivided off back in 1963. This area was owned by Clyde and Ethel May, and I'm not sure the relationship, probably grandparents, I'm thinking, had sold off an acre just to the left of DeGraff Road and another acre to an Archie Bonestell back in 1963 with a 16-foot wide right-of-way up to those lands. And the attorney failed to continue what was said in the deed, that when that right-of-way was granted to those 2 properties, Ethel and Clyde reserved the right to use the 16-foot wide right-of-way, which was 8 feet on the left parcel and 8 feet on the right parcel, for their heirs and assigns. And then in 1973, after Clyde had passed away, Ethel sold lands to the north to Rob Madsen, who built a house up there in 1973. That was also part of the 16-foot wide right-of-way. The house has been there for almost 50 years now. So the right-of-way has a history. And it is reflected in the deeds that Ethel May had the right to sell land and to other people, her heirs and assigns. So that's part of our argument for being allowed to continue to use DeGraff's Way. I have it listed as DeGraff's Road. It's DeGraff's Way for one more lot for this particular property. I will say that, once this lot is here, Lori could not subdivide any further properties that would use that road. If she were to do more development out there, it would have to be off of Yeri Hill Road, since all of the rest of the right of way is going to be on Neil's property, lot 2. So that's my presentation. If there's any further questions on this.
So, well, this is a public hearing, so we'll open anybody in the audience, in the public for this case has questions.
Peter, do you want to open the public, or was this just for the board? Because we did hear from the public last time. I mean, this is your call.
We've already reopened the public hearing. We're in the public hearing. It's continuing right now.
I know. Okay.
All right.
Can I ask?
Go ahead, Stuart. Go ahead.
I have a question. I understand what the representative has said in terms of the history of the right-of-way, but do we have anything from the town highway department addressing the adequacy of the right-of-way in terms of its size and grade and so on for emergency vehicle use?
The planning board asked for Scott Bonestell to do a site visit. He did. We received an email that you guys received that it was fine. His only suggestion was, and it's a suggestion because this is a minor subdivision, that there's a road maintenance in place. That they create a road maintenance for that.
But did he review the otherwise the physical characteristics of the road?
I'm telling you what we got. We asked him to go. That's what we got.
Yes, Stuart. The issue is that if the planning board were creating all those lots right now, then we would require a road maintenance agreement. But those lots exist. The road exists. So I don't, unless all the neighbors wanted to do a road maintenance agreement, I don't see how.
Right, but is there the road exists already, so it's being used, you're saying?
By the people at the top of the hill, Stuart.
Right, and so are there areas in there for like emergency vehicles to turn around? Or we have to drive back?
Not at this point that I saw. I did the site visit and drove up the road.
Did you have to turn around to get down, or did you back out?
I went all the way up actually and turned around. I went onto the neighbor's property up above because I was curious how steep it would get. So I went up there to turn around. But their proposed driveway to the new proposed house is on a fairly flat, it's not steep, so you could turn around right there.
Yeah.
But your point is well taken that we normally would require pullover spots, to let emergency vehicles in and out for over 300 feet. But again, we're not subdividing the lots below, so we really don't have anything to say in that. The building department is in charge of permitting the road. They're in charge of driveways and roads. And if they said it's okay, then that's, we don't have any say over that. I mean, the only thing the planning board can actually ever do is sometimes we can change radiuses if we feel that it's going to cut a cliff away or something. But the road itself has to be approved by the building department. The driveway, the access.
Yeah. Okay.
So, any other questions from Stuart or anybody else on the board for? And this is a public hearing, so or anybody else have questions?
Yes, sir.
Who's speaking?
Hi.
Is that Mr. DeGraff speaking?
Yes, sir. Yes, this is Richie DeGraff. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you? All right, so I got a few things here I want to say. We have discussed our concerns with our attorney. I just wanted to confirm that you received this letter.
Yes.
Okay. We are very concerned about the use of this dirt road right-of-way for vehicular or emergency access. It will not support such additional use. It is not designed for it, and it is not improved for it. It's just a 10-foot wide dirt road and nothing more. We are concerned about runoff or wells and the placement of septic on the proposed lot. Overall, we believe that this applicant has not met her burden of proof. Respectively, her proposed subdivision does not represent good planning. Her proposed use will not only impact, but it will also harm surrounding properties. The rest of my family's concerns are expressed in our attorney's letter.
Okay, sir. Well, we certainly hear that. It's a public hearing and you are an adjoining neighbor, and we certainly have to take your thoughts into consideration. Again, I have to say, and Stuart could help me on this, but the planning board really has no ability to make legal decisions over right-of-ways or access. I mean, the deed to the lot says it has access, which was enough for the planning board to go ahead. If that access is not correct, if it's not, those are issues that either have to go back to the building department who permits it, or the highway department, or to the ZBA.
Okay.
To make that determination. We can't legally make that determination of whether it's correct or not. The deed says they have access.
Yeah,
Whether
well,
the access it meets all the codes by the town, that's up to the building department. Your other concerns are very valid, runoff off the side of a mountain, but I have looked at the plans. They have proposed ditching the road correctly. Yeah, I think your biggest concern is water. But I totally sympathize with you, agree with you. I understand that, but the planning board has never, ever had the ability to permit or not permit a well. I mean, when someone gets a permit to build a house, they can drill a well. Anybody can drill a well on their property. And I understand that your lawyer's position that, you know, doing a complete CEQA, or not, it's not a CEQA, it's an environmental review. But unfortunately, sir, we have never reviewed underground aquifer resources except for the town itself.
I understand that in this situation, I think it's something of concern that should be.
I agree with you. It's of concern, but there's absolutely, we are powerless to, I mean, when someone gets the permission to build a house on a lot, they drill a well. And the other side, I agree with you. I understand how you feel, but can you imagine that if from now on, every time somebody applied for a subdivision to build a house or to build a house, and the neighbor said, no, you can't because I'm worried about my water supply.
Well,
that's an issue that I don't know how to solve.
It should always be a situation, and depending on the situation and the surrounding land, I'm sure would affect it more greatly than others, you know what I mean? And the other thing with the runoff, there's nowhere they're going to direct the runoff but onto my property and my mom's property. There's nowhere else to put it. So how are they going to take care of that? Well,
that's an engineering problem.
Yeah.
And so they would have to, if you bring it up as an issue and you're down below neighbor.
Absolutely.
Then they probably should prove to the planning board that they have that under control. They have to show that they would not dispense water onto your property through their development. I mean, any more than already exists.
Correct. And I can't even see how it's even possible to not do that. It's going to come down here.
Can I speak to that, Peter?
Sure, go ahead.
Like you said, we cannot stop the runoff from coming off these properties. Water runs downhill. So the development is very minimal. It's a very small footprint house. Very minor amount of impervious surfaces are being created. The rest of it's going to be lawn. Most of that area is already meadow. So you're changing meadow to maybe a lawn with a little bit of impervious. So DEC doesn't even require stormwater pollution prevention plans be developed for a project until you're over 1 acre of disturbance. And this is probably about 1/3 of an acre, if that. So it's a very minor area that's being developed. We're not doing a lot of grading. It's pretty much, maintaining the existing topography of the meadow that's there. So, I really don't feel as an engineer that this is going to create any significant impact to the runoff coming off that hill to your properties. I can say
Okay.
that.
All right, well, it's not the top of the property up on the flat. It's the road that you're gonna have to cut in to make that accessible is gonna cause a serious issue.
Well, the access is on a flat area already, so there really
No,
wouldn't be any cutting to,
It's
No.
not on a flat access. It goes up a hill.
well, you're talking about the existing access that goes up the hill?
Yeah,
Richie?
Yes. Yes. when
That's
you
not
open that-
changing. That's
You-
not being changed.
You're
A
gonna,
fire
you-
truck
you're
can
gonna
get
drive up an 8-foot wide road with a fire truck?
Or a construction vehicle.
They're
It's
not
8 foot.
planning on changing that as far as I'm aware.
It's 8 foot wide.
Uh,
You can't get a
The
fire
highway
truck up there.
department said it was accessible, and it's accessible.
I mean, there's been a house up at the top for 50 years as the,
Yeah, used by one vehicle.
how did they build that house? They must have had construction vehicles get to the top of that.
Who built the house was my uncle, who was a carpenter, and he hauled material up in his pickup truck.
Who plows the road? Who plows that road?
Marlin has somebody plow that road.
That's the person at the top.
That's the person at the top of the hill, which the right of way was granted for in the first place.
In 73, Marlin's
Yes,
right of way was granted, is my understanding, according to
Yes.
the deed.
that was for my uncle Bob and Lynn. And my aunt Lynn.
I mean, if the road's not plowed, the truck's not gonna get up there to save people.
That road's a bad road, I'm telling you.
I know
People
Neil
park-
has spoken with Marlin, and they've come to a verbal understanding that, or an agreement that they're going to, share in the maintenance of that road. I don't know if they've had that executed in writing yet or not, but
I understand that, but
I
why
see
do,
Lori's hand up and she just has to unmute herself so we can hear her.
because what happens here is every winter, they always end up parking down here on my property because they can't even get up the road.
Well, sir, we certainly heard your position and we understand it, but at this point, I really believe I have to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Peter, I'd let Lori talk first just because she hasn't said anything.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Lori?
I thought I had Fred's last name, but the Marlin Park maintains that road very well, very regularly. It's pitched away from the downhill side of the mountain, and it is plowed throughout the winter. She's a year-round resident. She has children, and she also has another home on the other lot that is rented out and used 365 days a year. Mr. Bonesteel did go up there. The one change or not change so much, but
improvement.
on the improvement, thank you. At the curve of the road going into the proposed lot, Marlin has always worried because of the pine trees. They will be removed and the road widened at that point. The bulk of this proposed lot is on a level grade tier of the hillside. And actually some of the shale that was used to make the road came from the bank that is shown above the driveway access to the proposed house. There's a turnaround right there, a natural turnaround.
Up in this area, you're probably.
That's
referring to.
exactly right.
Good
And
question.
also just in terms of, the house being built 50 years ago, the major swimming pool that's there now was not built 50 years ago. I mean, there's been heavy equipment, heavy trucks. She has her fuel delivered throughout the winter, as does the other house. And that's really all I need to say. But it is a 365-day-a-year residence, an additional property, and major home.
Lori, can I ask you a question, please?
Sure.
The place where you're talking about taking some trees down is in this general area, correct?
What, Julie? Yeah, yes.
Sorry,
okay.
you can't see mine. Yeah,
Yes.
right up there. Okay, that's what I thought.
And
Thank you.
just to make the sight line for the coming up and going around that
Right.
curve. And also widening the road in
that area.
Yes.
Okay.
And that was
But not on the-
discussed,
But
that
not
was
on the slope,
discussed with
correct?
Scott Bonesteel in person at the site.
Not on the site and on the property that's being subdivided.
Yeah,
Thank you.
All right, so,
Okay.
you know, the road is not in good shape. Marlin has never maintained it. And we had flatbeds and records up here last winter because people were off the side of the road. This road is not a good road. And the water issue, she's battled for years and it still floods out our driveway and causes damage. I mean, it's been a bad thing since day one.
Okay, we're kind of getting short on time, folks. I'd like to close the public hearing, but I'd also like to ask board members if they feel that we need to get some better input on this road, either through the ZBA or through either civilly or through the ZBA.
I don't think the ZBA is gonna, I don't know.
Well,
I'm lost with this. Like this, to me, that, like, the highway was what we did. I don't know.
I mean, as far as the planning board is concerned, we have access to a lot. And that's what it takes for us to approve a lot.
Yeah.
If there are issues over the access legalities, that's not something we can solve.
I agree with you, Peter.
So I'd like to close the public hearing because we have to do some other things. So I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the application pending draft resolution.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So on to unfinished business. We have to make a motion to approve draft resolutions for the Bearsville Center, and I'd like to ask Stuart if he would do that for the resolutions to make sure we got them good. Would you, Stuart?
All right, so I make a motion that the planning board approve the resolution as drafted for Bearsville Center Planning Board case number 22-1232 and SPR number 22-0141F.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I just thank the board for helping us get through this project? And I guess we're done for the night. Is that correct? Melissa?
Yeah, we have two little things to do here, but you.
We're all
you're-
set.
Jeff and Lori, this is your last planning board meeting. I'll be in touch.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, I'm gonna skip one over here to get to the other about the site visits.
Thanks.
You want to close this share screen?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So Brian and I made a site visit to the Ballantyne project, which was a timber harvest project, and he went to the other one, the Woodsy Macklin himself. We both went to the Ballantyne site, and I was quite impressed. Everything looked really good. The last time I was there, it was a total disaster with stuff all over the place, but everything looks good. Everything's cleaned up. The trees are well marked. So I say that we can go ahead and give them an extension for their.
I just want to thank Peter and Brian for going. I know sometimes it's not always easy to fit it in your schedule, and it was important, I think, that you guys went. So thank you.
Okay, so now the last thing is the HOTF proposed zoning. Yes,
Pause. Woodsy Mac. Brian went to Woodsy Mac. Where are we going with that? Was that good?
Everything's cool there.
All right, awesome. I'll schedule a public hearing.
I want to go back to the other one, if I may. Peter,
Of course.
yeah,
sorry to bog things down here. Is it, if I'm stating this correctly, and please correct me if I'm not, that the original plan was to have a house built on a lot that was significantly lower and closer to the road? And then that changed and the house was built, I would say, probably 750, 1,000 foot in elevation up on that mountain and then a road was built. Am I exaggerating if I would say at least a half a mile?
Well, I know it's half a mile, but you're right about what happened when we created that lot, that subdivision, and we created that lot. And Paul Schultz was chair then at the time, and he stipulated that the house should be built down below so that we didn't have to cut a road up that steep bank, which they did. And now the road looks pretty good. You and I drove up it. You should have seen it 3 years ago. You couldn't have made it in an ATV. It was unbelievable. But they fixed it. It looks good. We both saw it. But yeah, you're right. They were not supposed to build up there, but they did. And there you go. As far as
I'm confused. Which case is this?
this was a Valentine
Okay.
case, which anyway, it all looks good. They fixed it up and they built the road correctly, which now they'll, instead of skidding down that mess, they're going to drive the logs down on the truck.
Yeah. So the issue I have, and you know where I'm going with this, I mean, I don't like, again, the planning board being presented one thing and then having something done very significantly different. And then a fundamental change to that property and then coming back and then us basically saying, oh, okay, well, you did it. So I guess it's okay. And that's after they cleaned up their mess that you've pointed out. So
I just want to remind you guys, for that timber harvest, they were within the planning board. Peter, was it 3 years, 4 years? They were with DC. They were with the building department. They had, I don't know if there was violations, but it took a long time. When I first started in 2019, we were just finishing up with them. So I just want, like.
So what remedy do we have, if any? Do they have, yeah,
Well, the
what remedy
remedy
do we have, or do they have escrow in place that we could not, that they have to forfeit because they didn't follow? I mean, it's so egregious what they did.
The only thing we have in place is a performance bond for the timber harvest. Right now, they're doing that to the best of their ability. That's the only thing we can touch is the timber harvest. There's a $3,500 performance bond that they put up. That's here. And Peter, knowing the history of the case, you can correct me if I'm wrong, said, I'm going on a site visit before we grant this. And he did.
Yeah, I mean,
you along, Bri.
I mean, the landing site is clean right now. It's completely clean. And
Is a year reasonable, Peter, for this extension? For the timber harvest, is a year reasonable?
yeah,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
yeah, that's good. And you know, Brian went to see the other one, which is it's actually a timber, it's not a timber harvest. Well, they're making a timber harvest, but it's
Yeah.
actually a tree farm. They have a legal right as a tree farm. And under that right, they can manage the trees and lands there.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. This other one doesn't. So if we're gonna have a vote on it, I'm voting no on the one we saw, but I don't think it's gonna matter.
Fair enough, Bri. We hear you.
Okay.
All right.
So, okay, Melissa?
Yes. Do you
The
want,
last thing is this HOTF.
go ahead.
Wait a minute, do we have to do something about Valentine?
No, we'll grant an extent. We're granting a
We don't need to vote? We don't need to vote?
Peter went for a site visit. It's up to you.
For the Valentine thing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, that, we don't
I think
usually
we have to
vote on
vote.
a site visit, but the vote on extending the timber harvest, yes, we should vote on that.
Okay.
Absolutely right, absolutely right. So,
So moved.
okay. All in
Brian
favor?
says no. Everyone else?
Aye.
Good, good. Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
I respect Brian's opinion on this, but no, but yes.
Okay, so we're going to have a meeting with Nan on August 18th, and I look forward to that.
Please read at least the summary documents and take a look at the annotated table of contents, which will point you, it is not 329 pages, it's closer to 40. And what we just saw with FAM Acres is a good example of the kind of thing that would be required if we pass the essentials of this zoning, even if some of it is changed.
Planning board, I invited ZBA also to this just because I thought it was important. So just so you know, and next meeting, I squeezed in Lineman Institute for the public hearing because we were trying to rush that for them. And then we'll have Nan for the rest of it. I have dedicated that meeting basically to Nan. Okay,
Got it. Okay, folks, if anybody on the board has any last minute comments, otherwise I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, James?
Yep.
Okay,
thanks, guys.
Let's
All
go
right.
Mets, go Mets.
Stay cool.
yeah,
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
good night all.
Peter, I'll see you next week.
And I'll see you, Melissa, as soon as I can.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Bye all.
Bye, Judy.
Okay.